Yes. So Terry Payne is our speaker today, and he, by day, is an IT professional actually at the bankruptcy court, which is how I know him because I practice there. And he also is a reseller of heirloom cast iron cookware as his like side job hobby. So I will let Terry tell you the rest of his story and um, tell us about vintage cast iron.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for inviting me to speak to your group. It's kind of a unique hobby, I guess, that I started off with. Let me share my screen. And I've got a few slides here. Basically, you buy it once, you use it forever, and you hand it down as a family heirloom. What I'm primarily deal in is cast iron cookware that was manufactured between the 1880s and the 1960s. The new modern cookware, much newer than 1960, has a different weight to it and a different texture on the cooking surface. So we'll see a little bit about that as we go through these slides. If you have questions, you can speak up as we go through it, or you can save them for the end. And so yes, I buy, clean, sell, trade, and use vintage cast iron cookware. I inherited my grandmother's pans probably 15, 20 years ago. It sort of became the usage of them, and then it became an addiction. And then my kids said, what are you going to do with all these pans? And so they each have a set. My daughter has a favorite Cookware set, and my son, and she uses it a little bit. My son has a Griswold set, and he uses it some as well, but it'll just last forever. So here are some examples of what I'm talking about. And these particular pieces were either manufactured by Birmingham Stove and Range, BSR, Erie, Favorite Pequot, Griswold, Martin Stove and Range, Sydney, Victor, Volrath, Wagner, Wappick. There were a whole variety of manufacturers back in the day, and some for whom nobody knows who manufactured them because there's no marking on them. And we'll see some of the markings in a moment. And they manufactured not only skillets, but covers and lids, long griddles, 2-burner griddles that you could use for camping or on a grill or on your stovetop. Waffle irons, of course, are very well known. Handle griddles, they made different sizes, generally sizes 6 through 10 was the size of the griddle, and they varied of course, in diameter. Roasters, deep skillets, spiders typically are known for having 3 feet on the bottom of them, and they have a lid that you can put coals on top as well. And gem pans. They made lots of different sizes of gem pans, and this is a gem pan here. We'll talk a little bit about those. This was made by Griswold. I'm going to talk about Griswold, but there were lots of manufacturers as listed here. Just a few examples. And these days there are cookbooks about cast iron cookware and or magazines that one can still subscribe to an actual magazine and receive it in paper. They probably have an online version as well, but yeah, they do a very good job with lots of recipes. So back in the day, there was Selden and Griswold, and this was their manufacturing plant. And then it converted to Griswold Manufacturing, Favorite Pequotware. Each of these locations or each of these businesses had their own manufacturing plants. And they were a big business back then. Griswold Manufacturing Company began not by making cookware, but by making door hinges and other small pieces of hardware in a foundry that dates to 1868, when 2 families, the Matthew Griswold and the Selden brothers, joined in a business partnership to manufacture butt hinges. And the original building was locally known in Erie, Pennsylvania as the Butt Factory. Didn't take them long to want to change that name, I'm assuming, and they changed it to the Selden and Griswold Manufacturing Company. In 1887, the company reorganized again and changed the name to the Griswold Manufacturing Company. And on December 7th, 1957, the plant in Erie, Pennsylvania closed their doors as they were sold to a competitor, Wagner Manufacturing. You're going to hear me talk about Griswold and Wagner and Vollrath and Wappick. Griswold was known to be the king of cast iron cookware. They were known worldwide for their fine cooking ware. And they had a variety of logos and trademarks. They made Erie pans, which I have one here. This is an Erie pan. It says just Erie on the top. This is from approximately 1886. You can tell by the underside of the handle, it has this scoop handle. It's a super nice pan, nice smooth cooking surface. Griswold's Erie looked like this, except before I broke the handle off it, it was actually a skillet. And if you do drop cast iron, it will break and you'll break the handle off. And so a friend of mine made this into a big trivet. He just cut out the sides and everything. Victor, they were a bit shallower and a little less expensive. And when I say less expensive, I mean maybe a Griswold was selling for 89 cents a pan back then, and the Victors sold for 69 or 79 cents a pan. Of course, Griswold, Iron Mountain, they have a uniquely shaped handle, which I don't seem to have any out here. I got a whole bunch of things laid out for you to see. Another good pan, they made different sizes. Good Health, Best Made, SR and Company. We'll see an example of that in a picture. These last three were made by Griswold, for Sears, Roebuck and Company. Puritan and Merritt. They were sold in department stores. This was Griswold at the 1893 World's Fair, their display. And what's kind of interesting, I just found this picture online, is that the words Griswold's Erie ware are little skillets it's made out of. And you can see their highly polished cookware. Here there's an umbrella rack at the bottom left and another umbrella stand. And then the little gate has little teapots that are strung across. And then these are spittoons down at the very bottom. But you can see teapots and skillets and broilers, and it must have just been a really neat display. So the eras of the well-known cookware manufacturers, Favorite Pequot was out of Ohio. They manufactured from about 1916 to 1934. And I should have looked this up a little more just for Aaron, but I'm pretty sure they filed bankruptcy or had some issues and just went out of business. They got bought out by somebody else. And then Griswold, 1885 to 57. And then of course, Lodge. Lodge is still a manufacturer today. So if you go to Farm and Fleet or Target, you can buy a Lodge pan. It's considered a new modern pan, but the old Lodge, super nice pans and were lighter and had a smooth cooking surface. Martin Range and Stove, they made stove and ranges, and they would give away some of their pans, and you can find them marked on the bottom, Martin Stove and Range. And Vollrath ware, this is a Vollrath here. This is they were out of Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and they still manufacture stainless steel products, but no longer cast iron cookware. But they're pretty distinctive because their name on a marked skillet is a cross sort of on the side versus when you hold up a skillet regularly, it's like this. And so Vollrath will either have it fully marked or it'll just have a number. And this is from the 20s to the 40s. Wagner ware, of course, very well-known manufacturer, just a competitor. All these guys were competitors, just like automobile companies are today. They would, try and make their pans better, cheaper, and sell more of them. Wappick was kind of known for borrowing somebody's pan, using it as a pattern, and making their own pan and putting Wappick across it. But on some pans, you can see sort of a ghost mark across the top where it says Erie or Griswold, where they, could have done a little better job maybe fixing up the pattern that they used. And Sydney was the precursor to Wagner ware. This is an original Griswold label. I think it says $1.59. I have no idea what size it came from, but it's just interesting to see how they suggested once you bought a pan new, how you would prepare it and use it and clean it. So what are the differences between cast iron cookware manufactured before 1960 and a new modern piece of cookware that I consider modern? And so an older pan here on the left, you can see has a smooth cooking surface, and it has sort of a thinner wall, which makes the pan lighter in weight. Whereas a new modern pan is going to have a textured cooking surface because they don't do any secondary polishing any longer or machining on the cooking surface to make it smooth, presumably because of additional costs that's required to, you know, have somebody actually man a machine or have machines that do that. And so you can see that the sidewalls are thicker. And so a new modern piece will be heavier in weight versus a vintage piece. And the older the pan, the lighter the pan, generally speaking. So here's a little chart I put together a while ago. I have this type of a chart as well as others you might see in a binder at both of my booths. I sell vintage and antique cast iron cookware at Odana Antiques, as well as the Partyville Antique Mall, and I have binders there. I have a Facebook page, and these are on there as well if you have any interest in looking at them afterwards. But so if we start out at the top here, and these are all vintage pans in the top section, a Volrath number 8, they're a bit heavier at 4 pounds, 10 ounces, empty. Just the empty, clean pan. Wagnerware is going to be a little bit lighter. Puritan by Favorite, it's going to be a little bit lighter. Griswold small block smooth bottom from the 1940s, and we'll see some pictures of those, of some of these, is going to be a little bit lighter. Griswold from the 1930s, 3 pounds, 10 ounces, give or take. Each one's a little bit different. A little bit earlier piece from the 20s, going to be 3 pounds, 12 ounces, and it has a heat ring. Whoops, 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 where are we going here? It has a heat ring, so it's going to be slightly heavier. And then the Erie, like I had here earlier, is going to be your lightest pan. This pan is the one that's 3 pounds, 5 ounces. Super nice pan, solid piece. Will last forever until unless somebody drops it. Now there are some new modern companies that are, you know, kickstarted or trying to make cookware. Finex, I believe, is out of somewhere in the West, maybe Seattle. What I found about their pan online was that it weighed 8 pounds, empty. It's an octangular pan. It's a nice pan. They do a machining on the inside, but it's a heavy piece. This other company, New Burrow Furnace Skillet, again, about 6 pounds. And a new modern Lodge, that if you went to Farm Fleet or Target, it would be around 5 pounds, 6 ounces for a number 8 or about a 10-inch skillet. And we'll talk about the sizes of some of these skillets, I think, on the next slide. This is a size and capacity chart for pre-1960 cast iron cookware. And they made pans in sizes 2 through 14 and a 20. And now a 20 is going to be about, it's a hotel skillet. It's about the size of a semi-tire, and it has 2 handles on the side. And Griswold and a couple other manufacturers made them that large. They are around. We don't find them very often, but they are out there. This is a number 2. Not a lot of these around. This is a higher priced piece. My grandfather had 15 kids on my dad's side, so he would never buy the size of a pan. He would have probably bought 10, 11, 12, the bigger size pans, right? But 2s do exist. 3s, number 3s are very common in size, good size for 2 eggs. This was made by Griswold for, it's an advertising piece, compliments of the Cleveland Flux Company. And flux, I think, was a product that's used in welding to clean the metal beforehand. There were a few pieces that Griswold made for advertising pieces, something like that. 4s, a little less common. 5, 6, 7s, 8s, pretty common pieces. 11s a little less common. 13s are quite uncommon. 13 is a lucky number now considered, as well as it was back in the day. So people didn't want to buy something with a 13 on it. And so there aren't that many around. This lid in the background happens to be a number 13 lid for a skillet, which I sold the skillet actually on the day before everything shut down. It was a Friday, March 13th, and a guy from Green Bay walked into my Partyville shop, and he's like, I gotta have that. It was not an inexpensive piece. It was quite expensive, but, and it was a super nice pan. But I kept the lid just because I have lids sort of all around the kitchen. So then there are Dutch ovens and oval roasters. They go from size 3. Let me just show you an oval roaster. Let me grab one. This is an oval roaster, number 3 Griswold. We use it 3-4 times a year. It has the writing on the inside, self-basting cover. Comes with a trivet where you you put this in the bottom of the roaster, you put the meat on it, put a little water in it, and then it's self-based. Another piece that's pretty hard to find. They also made enamelware at some point. This is Robin's Egg Blue. They made this in various sizes. This is a small number 3. They made canary yellow, a red, and a jade green in these colors. I just have the lids for certain pieces. But what I wanted to point out here was that people, oftentimes when I talk to them, they tell me they want a 7-inch pan. And they think that because it has a number on the handle that equals 7 inches, where actually it's not quite, they don't match up for whatever reason, the numbers don't match up with the sizes. So you can see a number 7, for example, at the top of the cooking surface, or the top outside, the top part of the pan, it's actually 9 7/8, give or take a little. Now, down near the bottom at the cooking surface, it's about 8 1/4. The numbers, the sizes don't necessarily mean a lot. It's however many people you cook with and however many pans you want to have on your stove. Because it's not uncommon to have 2 or 3 pans, going at the same time, either on the stove or out on, if you're camping and you take them outside with you over a flame. So the numbers, they do all nest together, one inside each other, if you wind up getting quite a few pans. Here are some of the logos, the markings, and the brands I was talking about. This number 7 is considered a Griswold large logo smooth bottom, as opposed to these other 2 next to it have a heat ring. Some pans have a heat ring, some pans have smooth bottom. Generally, pans with a heat ring are older. So this number 7 that just says Erie here, it's from 1906 to 1912. Where the smooth bottom 7 is from the 30s. This Erie over here, because it doesn't have a scooped handle, is probably a 3rd series Erie from the early 1900s. The Erie with the spider, very rare, hard to find pan. That pan, if in that condition, looks like it's brand new. We're talking probably $4,000 or $5,000 for that pan. So if you ever find a pan with a spider on the bottom like that, that's not faked, because there are reproductions, and there are companies years ago that would manufacture either fakes or reproductions that make them look like the expensive size pans. Favorite Cookware. This is the Wagnerware Sydney pie logo. Looks like the shape of a piece of pie. General Wagnerware piece. Here's a Sears Roebuck and Company. So Griswold made this for Sears to be sold in their stores. The one in the upper right-hand corner is a Griswold with a small logo from about the 1940s. And that sort of aligns with this Cliff Cornell piece as well. Super good users. I sell a lot of them. I actually sell a lot of pans between the flea markets and the antique malls. Just a few slides or pictures about the production. This was at the Favorite Stove and Range Company that I borrowed from one of their pamphlets. You can see that each pan was made from a single mold in which a pattern had been inserted, and they just had them lined up in these factories. Very labor intensive. And here's the part where they're doing the special grinding and polishing. And on this last picture, you can see that there's a handle griddle that's mounted in this machine, and it's polishing the cooking surface so it has a smooth cooking surface. Here's just some of the things I hear people say when I'm talking to them. It's fun to cook with. It's much lighter than I expected because a lot of people are used to handling a pan that is a modern pan. It is going to be a heavier pan. They're very versatile. They go from stovetop to oven to grill to campfire. Food tastes better. The more you cook with a pan, the more seasoned the pan will become. They have a smooth cooking surface. They last forever. My mom used to use these pans. I have pans in my garage. We gave all our cast iron away years ago.
Oh,
I hear
big
that
mistake.
too many times. Yes, yes. That's what I tell people. But and then I find that they want to buy a pan. So, you know, it's cyclical. It comes around. They're very utilitarian. So seasoning, usage, and cleanup. This is basically what I do. Once I get them scrubbed and cleaned up, I season them one time with Crisco, all vegetable, the white oil, and I season them one time. And then as somebody buys one and they cook in it, the more they cook in it, the more seasoned it becomes. I encourage people to saute the first few times or cook something oily or greasy. Avoid acidic foods because that will, like tomato based or vinegar, it'll take that fresh seasoning off. And then usage. So I'm on a glass top stove and I've been on electric coil, I've been on gas. I would prefer not to be on glass top, but I am. But I use these pans all the time. And you can either use the smooth bottom pans or you can use the pans with the heat rings. And I actually have the set of these, this particular 1906 series with the heat ring and use it on glass all the time. But the first thing I do is heat the pan up. So let me just step back a little bit here. So you heat the pan up for like 5 to 7 minutes. And when I say heat it up, I don't mean turn it all the way up on super high. Low to medium is probably going to be as high as you need to go unless you're searing a steak or something. So low to medium. Start out low, increase the heat, and when the handle's hot, the pan is hot. All right. A cold pan is a sticky pan. So if you just put this on the stove, put a little bit of oil in it, it's not hot, and you throw something in it, chances are it's going to stick to it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So what I usually do is I heat the pan up 5 to 7 minutes, touch the handle, it's hot, and put some oil in. And then often I'll put salt and pepper or seasoning in right on the bottom of the pan and then put the food on top of it. And then you can give it a little bit of a shake most of the time. Sometimes it does adhere to it, especially on a fresh pan. So now that I've cooked my food and I'm gonna progress towards cleaning it up, and some folks have, you know, sometimes food can adhere to these pans. No worries, if it does, it'll come out. And essentially what I do is let it cool to the touch and then turn on the tap water to be very hot and swirl it around a couple of times, wipe it out. You can use a soft bristle brush, nothing abrasive, no steel wool or anything on a seasoned pan. And an important tool is a stainless steel spatula. You can scrape on the pan. If you go to a bar and order a burger, they're scraping on that cast iron griddle all the time with a spatula. So you can do that. And just some super hot tap water a couple of times. Can you use soap? You can use soap if you want to use soap. If you ask 10 people whether or not you should use soap, you're going to get 12 different answers at least. some people are, I mean, it can create lengthy discussions about whether you should use soap. Soap, back in the day, as I understand it, used to contain lye. Lye is something that's used to remove the seasoning, or it will remove the seasoning if it's left in it too long. But these days, soap doesn't contain lye. You can use a little bit of soap. Don't let it sit or soak in water for, probably more than a half hour or so. Certainly not overnight. So when the pan is cool to the touch, it's time to clean it. Not tomorrow, as I tell my kids, not next week. When it's cool, get it cleaned up and you'll be happier. It'll be an easier experience. There are covers. They're self-basting covers. Each manufacturer has a different design. Griswold happened to have this self-basting ring. So the belief was, or the belief is, that you use a self-basting cover and the steam will rise, it'll hit these ridges and it'll fall back down and baste your meat. And they put out pamphlets that you could buy a cheaper cut of meat. And that was one of their selling points, was that by buying a Griswold pan with a self-basting cover, it would be just as tender when it was done as anything else. So this is considered a high dome cover. This is considered a low dome cover. They just don't sit as high. They're very beautiful on the inside. They have patent dates. These are skillet covers, and you can tell because they have the little bulge or the little lipper that covers on the skillet, where a Dutch oven will be completely round. The lid will be totally round. What I encourage people to do is every time you use one of these covers, if you buy a pan with a cover or a cover separately, is to oil the inside of the cover before you put it in the oven, because that steam is really intense and it'll take that seasoning off the top of or the inside of the lid. So just oil it well and you should have a good experience.
Hey, Terry.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know we have about 5 more minutes, and then I wanted to give 5 minutes for questions. So just so you have some time reference.
Super. Thank you. Cold pan is a sticky pan. Heat the pan for 5 to 7 minutes. Use a metal spatula. Wash with very hot tap water. Completely dry it on the stove. Let the water evaporate, and then with a very light coat of oil, olive oil, whatever oil you use, just coat it, just a glistening amount to, because these will rust. They are iron if they're not dry. And that brings me to my questions, I guess. What questions do you have?